What's going on, CK Nation? It's your boy, the Boss Man CK, and on today's episode of the Full Throttle, we're continuing our history trip down track history lane as we go and visit one of the historic tracks in NASCAR history. Some people actually don't know about it, but we're going to go visit it today. Now, normally when people think about NASCAR history, they think about Daytona, and they think about Charlotte Motor Speedway. They think about Darlington, Bristol, Martinsville, Talladega, and all the famous tracks like that have become household names over the years. But long before the giant speedways became the center of the racing world, NASCAR was built on dirt. It was built on small tracks scattered throughout the South. It was built on local racers, hard-working mechanics, loyal fans who gathered every weekend to watch the stock car battle for victory. Today, we're going back to one of the most important of those tracks, a track that helped shape NASCAR during its earliest years, a track where some of the biggest legends in motorsports competed, and a track that remains one of the physical reminders of where NASCAR began. We're going back to a little lovely place in Hillsborough, North Carolina. We're going to Occoneechee Speedway. So let's get to it.
Coming and get out of the way. They're sipping on lattes. We're cracking the cold one. Life in the fast lane. I was just having more fun. They talk about their high rise. I talk about my lift kit. One look at this lifestyle and you know you're gonna dig it. Yeah,
Alrighty, so to understand why Occoneechee, I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong, Occoneechee, forgive me fans, Occoneechee Speedway matters, we have to first understand the era in which it was built. The 1940s were a completely different time in American motorsports. I mean, when you think about it, motorsports was rolling, but it wasn't really rolling, and a lot of people say that motorsports started off with bootlegging. Which that could be true at some points, because when you think about it, that bootlegging was big back in the South in the day, especially their stories down at Middle Georgia Speedway, where they were actually moonshining and building moonshine or making moonshine in a distillery that was underneath turn 3 and 4 at Speedway, as Dale Jr. told us. Which, by the way, too, Dale Jr. has been to Occoneechee Speedway, but we're just going behind them and talk a little bit more about it. So, no disrespect to him, because I got all mad respect for Junior in the world, because he covered this on Lost Speedways, but I'm also going to give you my perspective on it. So, many roads throughout the South were still rural back then. Most racetracks were dirt. Like I said, a lot of dirt tracks. I mean, in the Carolinas, you had dirt tracks like, Metrolina. Metrolina was a dirt track. We have one here where I live that just closed about a year ago or two, about a year. That is a famous dirt track called Fayetteville Motor Speedway. So I mean, like, dirt tracks back in the day were big. Nobody really raced on asphalt until Daytona was built. So drivers often raced several times a week at different venues. Like I said, they would go different. On Friday and Saturday nights, they go anywhere, load their stuff up and go anywhere. Dale Earnhardt said he was trying to make a living early in his career, going to dirt tracks every weekend. Safety standards were minimal compared to today's racing world. But one thing was clear: Americans loved automobiles, and they loved racing. The property that would eventually become Occoneechee Speedway originally served as a horse racing facility. Yes, it originally served as a horse racing track. Long before stock cars ever turned laps there, horses competed on the oval located just outside Hillsborough, North Carolina. Then along came a man whose name would change the sport forever: Bill France Sr. Today, Bill France Sr. is remembered as the founder of NASCAR. But before NASCAR became a national organization, France was already thinking about ways to grow stock car racing. He understood that for the sport to survive, it needed quality facilities. It needed organization, and it needed leadership. In 1947, France acquired the property and began transforming it into a racing facility. What had once been a horse track was converted into a dirt oval designed specifically for stock car competition. The speedway was nearly 1 mile in length. Grandstands were constructed, fans began arriving, and before long, racing became a major attraction in the area. What makes the story even more remarkable is that all this happened before NASCAR officially existed. Yes, before NASCAR actually got going, before Daytona was built, we had Occoneechee Speedway. The Speedway was helping build the foundation of the sport before the organization itself had ever been formed. In December of 1947, Bill France Sr. granted drivers, promoters, and racing officials at the Streamline Hotel in Daytona Beach, Florida. Those meetings would eventually and ultimately lead to the creation of NASCAR. The National, and if some of you don't know what NASCAR stands for, it is the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. NASCAR. Yes. When NASCAR officially launched its strictly stock division in 1949, Occoneechee Speedway quickly became one of the sport's most important venues. Yes, we were still racing there. Yes, even before Daytona was built, we were racing there. And yes, we were racing on the beaches of Daytona as well before Daytona was built. At the time, stock car racing looked very different than what fans see today, obviously. The cars were heavier, the tracks were rougher, the schedules were demanding. Drivers often raced hundreds of miles away from home and then drove through the night to reach the next event. Because you got to figure, airplane travel back then wasn't as it was there, but it wasn't as big for teams to do like they do today. So you would put your car on a hauler, you would drive to where you're racing at, and if you were going to race at another track that was 100 miles away, whatever prize money you got, you would use that for fuel, to get gas for your trailer, and fix your car, and then you just go to the next track. Many competitors worked on their own equipment. Some even drove the same car they raced to and from the track. It was a different world, but it was also an exciting world. And Occoneechee Speedway became one of the places where the excitement came to life. The Speedway had hosted races during NASCAR's inaugural season and would continue serving as a major stop on the schedule for years to come. Today, it stands as the only surviving dirt track from the historic 1949 season. Which, that is true. They don't race there anymore, and what Dale Jr. showed us on Lost Speedways, it's more of a historic site. You can actually walk it. They have a trail there that you can walk. They still have the original stands there from the front, on the front stretch from then. Because, it's still there. If you think about it, right? Metrolina is no longer there. I know firsthand it's not there anymore because me and my wife and our good friends a few years ago went and checked it out. After Dale Jr. did the Lost Speedways there, about a year I think it was, and that thing was already pretty much gone. They were turning it into a FedEx warehouse and some other industrial things. But again, Occoneechee Speedway is still there. It's being preserved so you can walk it. That fact alone makes it one of the most significant locations in all of NASCAR history. One of the best ways to measure the importance of a racetrack is by looking at the names that competed there. And when it comes to Occoneechee Speedway, the list reads like who's who of NASCAR pioneers. From Fonnie Flock, Tim Flock, Fireball Roberts, Curtis Turner, Joe Weatherly, Cotton Owens, the late great Ned Jarrett. A lot of these are late greats too because they passed on. Junior Johnson, Lee Petty, Richard Petty. They weren't just successful racers. These men helped create NASCAR. They raced during an era when courage was often more important than technology. Drivers battled mechanical failures, dangerous conditions, and long travel schedules. Every victory had to be earned. Every lap carried risk. Many of these legends we celebrate today competed on dirt tracks exactly like Occoneechee Speedway. The racing was physical, the competition was fierce, and fans loved every minute of it. What I've heard, every time they had a race there, they sold it out. Just straight out. They would sell it out. Imagine standing in the grandstands during the 1950s, dust filling the air, engines roaring, cars sliding through the corners, the crowds on its feet. That was the atmosphere that made tracks like Occoneechee Speedway special. Let's talk about the speedway itself. Occoneechee Speedway measured just under 1 mile in length. Its dirt surface challenged drivers in ways modern racers were rarely experienced today. On dirt, the racing groove constantly changes. It does. Local dirt tracks will tell you grooves always change from day to day. It doesn't stay the same. Like, for example, with the dirt, if it rains or if they water it down, the groove could be different than what it could have been yesterday when they had practice or something. Asphalt and concrete, over time, the grooves do change when it weathers in. And when they lay more tire rubber down, it does change. But it doesn't change every day. So like, for example, NASCAR goes to Charlotte, they practice one day, right? You'll hear drivers saying there's only 2 certain grooves that they can run, because the rubber's laid down and the track's weathered in, but they like it, okay? Then the next day, unless it rains and it washes that rubber off, the groove is still the same. It's still there. You don't get that with dirt tracks. Dirt tracks are different. They change every day. And that's what made Occoneechee Speedway special. Track conditions evolve throughout an event. Drivers must adapt lap after lap. One mistake can send a car spinning. One good decision can lead to victory. The unpredictability is part of what made dirt racing so exciting. Drivers often steer with the throttle. They learned how to control slides. They searched for grip wherever they could find it. Fans never knew exactly what would happen next. The Speedway became known for producing competitive racing and memorable moments. As NASCAR continued growing during the 1950s and the 60s, Occoneechee Speedway remained one of the organization's premier dirt tracks. By the 60s, NASCAR was evolving rapidly. We were getting more tracks. They were starting to build tracks. The sport was becoming more professional. New tracks were being built. Paved surfaces were becoming increasingly common. Race teams were becoming more sophisticated. Television exposure was growing. The sport that had been born on the dirt was slowly moving into a new era. Tracks like Daytona represented the future, but places like Occoneechee Speedway remain vital links to NASCAR's past. Even as the sport changed, the fans continued filling the grandstands. They still kept coming. Fans still kept coming. Drivers continued to battle for victories, and the Speedway continued to write its place in history. Unfortunately, every racetrack eventually faces challenges. For Occoneechee Speedway, those challenges came in multiple directions. Local opposition to Sunday racing increased over time. Economic pressures were mounting, and eventually the difficult decision was made to close the track. The final NASCAR race at Occoneechee Speedway took place in September of 1968. The winner that day was none other than Richard Petty, the King himself. And it was a fitting ending to one of NASCAR's greatest drivers winning the final NASCAR sanctioned race at a historic track. When the checker flag waved, nobody could have known just how important that moment would become. The engines fell silent, the crowds went home, and the gates closed forever. After Speedway closed, nature slowly began reclaiming the property. Grass grew over portions of the track, trees expanded throughout the area, structures deteriorated. Year after year, the Speedway seemed destined to become another forgotten chapter in racing history. And sadly, that's happened to many historic tracks. It has. But thank God for people like Dale Jr., who loves history, NASCAR history, him and the other guys on his crew that went back to these speedways, these lost speedways, and brought them back to life for just a little bit. Some have been demolished, which, like I said, Metrolina Speedway's been demolished. Unfortunately, Myrtle Beach Speedway's been demolished. Others have been developed into shopping centers or neighborhoods. Myrtle Beach has been turned into a neighborhood, I know, because when we went there last year, me and my wife drove through it, and I couldn't believe. Once they're gone forever. Future generations lose the opportunity to experience those important pieces of history. For a while, it appeared Occoneechee Speedway might suffer the same fate, but thankfully, a dedicated group of individuals stepped forward. Preservationists recognized the importance of the Speedway. Local supporters worked to protect the property. Motorsports historians understood what was at stake, because this wasn't just another old track. This was one of the birthplaces of NASCAR. Through the years of effort, the Speedway was preserved. Like I said, you can go there now and actually walk it. I want to go one day. I've told my wife I would love to go up there one day and actually try to walk it, or at least, walking trails were developed. Historic structures were protected. Like I said, the front stretch stands are still there. Educational markers were installed, and future generations were given the opportunity to learn about this incredible chapter in racing history. Today, the Speedway remains one of the best preserved examples of early NASCAR history anywhere in America. So why should modern racing fans care about Occoneechee Speedway? The answer is simple. Because history matters. When I say history matters, that's what I mean. We all come from somewhere. The sport had to start somewhere, and we cannot forget the history of it. Yes, we have the NASCAR Museum. Yes, we have RCR's museum. We have all that. But we still have to go look at these places. Also, did you guys know, which I don't know if you knew, but you can still kind of see the reminiscence of Raleigh's State Fairgrounds when you Raceway when you go to Raleigh, because I've seen it. The front stretch stands are still there, even though they're doing construction on it right now, or on the fairground property. The front stretch stands are still there from where the Speedway was. It's stuff like that that we have to go and look at to remember where NASCAR came from. And we can be able to teach it to our future generations. Like, I got a grandson coming. I can teach him this. Hey, this is where your papa's favorite sport came from. This is what we got. This is how we got here. Every sport has roots. Every tradition starts somewhere. Every legend has a beginning. Before the $1 million sponsorships, before the giant television contracts, before state-of-the-art race shops, there were dirt tracks, there were local heroes, there were passionate fans, and there was places like Occoneechee Speedway. Without tracks like this, NASCAR wouldn't exist. Without tracks like this, many of the legends we celebrate today might have never had the opportunity to showcase their talent. Places like Occoneechee Speedway remind us where the sport came from, and that's something it's something worth preserving. So, with that being said, that brings us to the end of our full trip, or track history road trip on Full Throttle. I hope you guys have enjoyed learning about the incredible history of Occoneechee Speedway, and just realize it's more than an old dirt track. It's a surviving piece of NASCAR's foundation. It's a reminder of how far the sport has come, and it's proof that preserving racing history matters. If you enjoyed that today, Like I say always, keep hitting the like, subscribe, and follow button. And always remember, we're always full throttle. For Kyle, and we're all gas, no brakes. And I'll see y'all on the next episode of CK Motorsports Full Throttle.